Welcome to Talking Peace with the Western New York Peace Center, being recorded here and broadcast here at WBNY at Buffalo State University, WBNY 91.3 FM, Buffalo's original alternative radio station. We're very grateful to Buff State, to WBNY, to our producer here, Greg Harvey. Thank you, Greg.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
And I want to wonderful shout out to Brian Harrell. Hi, Brian.
Hi. Thank you very much for having me. Blessed to take part in this opportunity to take over government public machinery to talk trash about the very powers that are oppressing us and using their resources to do it.
Oh,
Love it.
So many things we need to talk about. Actually, in this show in particular, I do want to give a special shout out to our other place that we record or pre-record pre-tape shows for this for WBNY, and that is Think Twice Radio and Richard Wicca. Thank you, Richard, as well, because he's the one who's going to get this up on our YouTube channel so that people can hear it afterwards if they want to check on anything or they missed the show or whatever. So we're very grateful to both WBNY and Think Twice Radio. And when I think of gratitude, I do think of our BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, brothers and sisters who know so well how important gratitude is. And so many people who know that as gratitude is really, really the remedy for so many ills, for us to help us get through the things that we have to deal with or are dealing with. And certainly we want to recognize and remind people that we are on stolen Haudenosaunee land. It's been taken through trickery and violence. It's actually land of the Seneca or the Onondaga, the keepers of the Western Door. So we honor them, we thank them, we learn from them so much, and from our Black, Indigenous, and other Indigenous and people of color that we've learned from. And one of the things that the Haudenosaunee do is start all of their gatherings out with these kind of recognition that we're making, as well as with the Ganonyo, which is a Thanksgiving address that basically thanks all the people who made the gathering possible, thanks Mother Earth for giving us everything that we need to have a good life on this earth, for the living waters, Mini-Wachoni, water is life, for the wonderful plants of all kinds, nutritional and medicinal, the animals of all kinds, swimming, crawling, four-leggeds, and swimming, and for the all the beauty around us, for the Creator, and for the love that animates it all. And then the people would say Nyahweh. The one person would say Nyahweh, and then the people say Nyo. So Nyahweh.
Nyo.
Thank you. Thank you all. And I'm very grateful to be here. This special show, kind of I want to call it the beloved community show in a way. We have a very special guest. I am so honored and thrilled to welcome Reverend Dr. Majadi Baruti, who is an Earth chaplain. He's a peace activist. He's a poet and just a wonderful friend and ally, partner in so many ways, and we're so grateful for your coming, Majadi.
Thank you, sister. I appreciate you. Thank you so much, and I appreciate being here.
Well, this is kind of a hodgepodge show. So I feel like it's a hybrid show because our topics are a couple, and that's why I said beloved community, because two things we want to recognize, two or three or even more about today. So today, February 2nd, Monday, February 2nd, it is First of all, we've just started Black History Month, so that's very big, and especially in this time when they're trying to erase Black history. And we also want to talk about it's Tu B'Shvat, which is the festival of the trees for Jewish people. And trees are so vital,
Yeah.
and they're such great examples for us too. We can learn so much from the trees. We benefit so much from the trees, and they're in all our faith traditions. So we'll talk about that. And then there's a lot of other things, even just things to mention about what is going on or isn't going on in our community as well. So that's sort of a plan of show. That's very loosely. But so when we think of that, so let's just say when we think of the beloved community, what are the values that you think of? So we'll just go around first to you, Dr. Majadi, and then.
So for me, the beloved community starts with an understanding of sharing. That's the first, and I grew up with that when I was growing up in Chicago. And it wasn't even my mother's intention. It is part of African spirituality to share. And
Yes.
I've made the joke before that black people are really bad at capitalism because it's not centered in sharing. That's
Right.
why we're not really good at that.
Right.
So we would be better in a construct where we're sharing everything. We're working as a collective. So for me, I grew up making sure, when my mother would make sure that others would have food, and they would make sure that we would have food. We would share clothing, even, that type of thing. And so that was a normal way of living for me. So when people talk about communal living, it's not this far out, crazy idea. Sharing is caring, and so
Right.
that's how I was raised.
Right. No, that's wonderful. Sharing is caring.
And
Yes.
If I could interrupt, and Doctor, if I can have you go over to the other microphone. We're having some difficulty with that one.
And it's funny because I had steered him to this side because last time we were having
I know.
trouble with that match.
It
that's
moved to
way
the other
those
side of
things-
the table.
It's Murphy's Law.
Yeah.
We're here. We were so grateful to get here on time, just to start with, between just little unforeseen things,
Okay, is that
including
better?
I didn't
Oh,
check.
there we go.
Okay.
Much
That
better.
is
Great,
much better.
great.
That is. Thank you for doing that. I was noticing it too, Greg. You've got such an ear for it. That's why you're the chief engineer. But so in the talking circle, so let us still go. I'm back to. I get very stuck on the Haudenosaunee go counterclockwise, right? But let's just go. We can go to you, Greg, and then to Brian, and then me.
Sure. So I value technology when it works. How about
Right.
that?
Right.
I have to say I was focusing in on that and not on the conversation. So I'm not prepared for class.
So that's all right. No, so we're just talking. And actually, if you can change the name of this show on the verbiage there,
Yeah.
we're calling it the Beloved Community Show because that's the thread in common of the two main things that we wanted to address here, being, Black History Month and Black History, right? Which is the big thing, because that's the bigger thing. The month is just what it is, and every month is Black History Month. It should be, But anyway, and Majadi has some things to share about that too, and also about the trees and the community of trees and how they help our community. So, the beloved community. So, when you think of the beloved community, what are the values that you think of?
Well, definitely cooperation, collaboration. Jumping on the "It Takes a Village" theme,
Right.
It truly does. My neighbors across the street would have had a snow-filled car had we not called over and said, "Hey, your hatch is still open and it's 10 o'clock at night."
Oh my God! Wow.
He totally forgot, and he brought the groceries in.
Right.
I looked out the window and said, that does not look right. So,
Right.
And I could have just gone to bed and said, it's up to him. But no, we're a community. We look out for each other.
Right.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's so many little big and small ways. Brian?
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback on that. It's, no one can give 100% of the time. You rely on the people around you, and, they may be different creed, color, religion, belief system, political party, but it doesn't matter because we live in proximity to each other, so we have to look out for each other. And I think that's why it's important to be, say, a community organizer, a community activist, as opposed to an activist in any of those other realms, because it's very real and it's very tangible, and it's all about the people right around you that they sort of become your family that you don't choose in a way.
Right.
Right. Oh, so well put. So that is so important too. That collaboration and that proximity that also builds community, even when one might not necessarily exist, that we, as we're there, and especially when things start to go wrong, which we'll talk some more about climate as well, certainly, and what's going on in the environment. I can't help mentioning the common good. You know, I always bring up truth and love. So truth, yes, the truth of what, you know, in a community, part of, you know, being truthful with each other is critical, because being being in community also means building trust, that people need to trust each other. So that truthfulness is important to trust. Without truthfulness, we don't have trust. You know, with all the lying that goes on, we are having huge problems with that right now in this country. So, and love is in community, back to that, it's what we have in common. And we're all so connected. Even that's how, you know, whatever kind of disparate topics you could have, they can be connected because we are all connected. Our issues are connected and our remedies are connected. So, so with all of that and all those wonderful values, it's very inspiring always to start out with that. So I want to go over to you, Majadi, and to, you know, tell us what you think we should know about Black History Month. And
So,
yeah, go ahead.
Thank you.
Please.
So first of all, the founder of Black History Month was this brilliant historian, the late Dr. Carter G. Woodson. People may know him from several of his works, including now I'm blanking out on his work. His
But
books.
didn't he do a lot with the Underground Railroad? Some of the
just a
writing
little bit
about
more from a writing standpoint.
Writing
he did
about
that
it.
from.
Right.
But his study of history was to be able to
Right.
place Black folks inside of the American dynamic as not being a separate construct, but that we are here and that we existed prior to colonialism as well.
Of course.
One of the main mistakes that people make is stating this bizarre idea that, and I'm going to say it just like it was given, they gave us the shortest month of the year. First of all, there was no they that
Right.
did that. This brilliant scholar, historian, archivist, Dr. Carter G. Woodson,
Right.
of his own volition, brought forth what was first called Negro History Week. And it was during the month of February because it positioned it, he was positioning it between two well-known white political heads, and to put it in a place where it would be consistent with all of American history. That's how he saw it. His books, The Miseducation of the Negro, discussed how Black folks were intentionally miseducated.
Right.
And he also had a book that people don't know about. He was also had one called The Education of the Negro. His understanding of Negro History Week was that we were going to be practicing this for some 20 years. That was his thought. And this is in the late 1800s, early 1900s. That's what he thought was going to happen. And then it continued. It grew into Negro History Month, and then eventually Black History Month. Some people even say African History Month to connect us to the continent of Africa. But no one gave us this holiday. That's one of the first things I like to clear up.
Right.
And that's not what happened. And it wasn't done because it was the shortest month of the year.
Or the coldest.
Or the old, it's just really.
No.
There's a lot of misinformation about what it is.
Right.
And when we say Black history, or I like to look at Africana history, we're talking about one that pre-exists some of the so-called classical civilizations, Greek civilization, Roman civilization, things that came way before those were even in play.
Right.
In fact, many of the scholars of Greek civilization would study in ancient Egypt. And another thing, contrary to popular opinion, neither is Africa a country. It is a continent.
Right. Oh, geez.
And secondly, the Nile Valley and Egypt has always been on the continent of Africa.
Right.
It didn't move to
Right.
Europe.
Right.
And none of the structures that you see in ancient East Africa, in the Nile Valley, do you find inside of Europe. So the idea that
Right.
Europeans came into Africa and bestowed their genius upon the poor and lonely, daft Africans is false.
Right.
Some of the greatest libraries existed in Africa. We had universities, University of Sangor, and these types of things. The Library at Alexandria. Now, if you think about how a library is structured now, when you go to the library, you find books that date things going back thousands of years. Mm-hmm. What if you take a library that existed thousands of years ago? Mm-hmm. What were they recording? So we're talking about a lot of history,
right?
And they burned it. People burned this library, so they burned this. Because when you burn a library, or you harm an elder, you're harming knowledge, you're harming truth. So Black history has to move past what we deal with here in the United States, and we have to go into a study of our presence here before colonialism, trading back and forth with South and Central America already, something that is documented, and how old we are, and being the first humans actually on the planet, and then we brought forth everyone else. So.
Right. Well, I want to say, first of all of that is so important, and Black history is so important because, first of all, we owe so much to Black history, as you're just saying. So many things that got established in, ancient times in Africa, and the earliest people found ever have been in Africa. And especially, I want to say, in this day and age when there's efforts going on to erase Black history, which there's been efforts before of misstating and really lying about history or shading about history. And now with the advent of He Who Shall Not Be Named, the efforts have just gone on steroids about how to try and suppress Black history. So which is our history too. We're all on this planet. It's history. It's just plain history. So to try and misrepresent it, to try to whitewash slavery and things like enslavement of people is a ridiculous effort that is going on and that is succeeding in some parts of the country where they're going through the textbooks and things like that and restating and, suppressing the truth of the matter of what was going on.
And they have the only issue with that is that they have folks like me that exist. My fiance first. I've always been who I am. I read books when I was very young. I was reading as a young reader, and I read voraciously. But my fiance would, later in my life, she would start referencing me as a griot, which is a West African tradition, and it is a genetic thing. So to answer this before someone asks, you can't go and take a griot class. You can't become a griot. You can't be initiated as a griot. You are born this way genetically. The griot is a storyteller. We are historians. We are poets. We use vocals. We use orality to move history. One of the most important things is that we're walking around with this stuff in our head. At any given point, and I've actually been asked on the spot to do this before, I have been asked to give a history lesson. And it's in my head. Right. Now, I can't remember where I put my keys, but doggone it, I could tell you about what ancient Senegal looked like, right? I can't. I lose things all the time. I had to do the same thing over and over again. But for some reason, my brain is able to hold history in my head. And I'm talking about like thousands of years of history. I could just
Well, it's because you're connected to those people.
So why don't we
from
go
thousands of years ago?
Right, exactly.
So what are your thoughts? I want Greg and Brian, as you're hearing, about, well, first of all, some of this which you may or may not have known before about, like the origins of Black History Month, and especially what I think is so critical, these current efforts to erase Black history or whitewash the actual facts of the matter of the enslavement and oppression of Black people that was, horrendous and continues and is continuing. So it makes it all the more important that we are paying attention to Black history. So, Greg, and then Brian, if you
I'm going to call pass because I was working on something else.
You can do that. You can do that. That's why we're just always happy that to include you when we can. And Brian,
I think the Library of Alexandria parallel is incredibly poignant because I don't know if you guys can resonate with this, but I grew up my formative younger years, my middle school years, was during the Obama administration.
Mm-hmm.
So Black History Month was kind of, we kind of rolled our eyes at it. Is because it's like, do we really need this anymore? Like, haven't we gotten past, like, can't we can kind of all just, I don't want to say kumbaya to sound trite, but you know what I mean? We kind of were in this false sense that we were in a post-racist society.
Uh-huh.
And now the pendulum is swinging the other way so fiercely and so ferociously. It really is incredibly fortunate that this gentleman had the foresight to be like, no, this is a month that we need to keep,
right,
and it can't move. Like, this is something we need to constantly remind ourselves of. These are stories we need to constantly tell ourselves.
Yes.
Because there are forces at all times, even in I won't make a comment if it was quite good times, but the better times, there's
right,
still forces in the background trying to erase it, trying to undo it. And it's incredibly unfortunate, but it just speaks to the importance of the beat going on and keeping the fight and the struggle going.
right.
Right. And unless you totally erase humans from a culture, which, that's been attempted several times too.
Right.
But unless you erase the very bodies of the people, and very particularly folks, like I said, myself, like the griot, the history will always remain. Because it actually happened. It's not
right,
like it didn't happen because you've erased books from a space. That's not how that works.
right.
And there are people, like I said, there's people walking around with this history, not only family history, but the history of cities, the history of towns. There were some, and this is an underestimation, but there were some 80 cities and towns that were established in the United States by Black folks.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those were actually intentionally destroyed by their white counterparts in those areas who
right,
were exhibiting some jealousy over the economic prowess and the natural inherent genius of Black folk as they built cities and towns. And that is an attempt to erase the presence of the people. But again, you have people walking around who can remember certain things, and they record them. They have them in their head. There's an idea that orality, which is, like I said, for some cultures, that's who we are. That's how we remember things. That's how we collect
right,
stories and pass on stories. People think of orality as a lesser form of research than that which is written. And that's not how that works at all.
Right.
Not even a little bit. Because you write it doesn't mean that the orality is necessarily a lesser dynamic. But that's how kind of Western thought leans itself on. We are always producing that which is prime, that which is divine even, that which is sacred, and everyone else is inherently lesser than ours. And that's not how that works at all.
Well, I'm going to say, as an auditory learner, oral history, we learn more. We remember stories. And if they're written or if they're, oral tradition, they're there. And back to what you said about truth. It's just the truth of the matter. And it's really all of our responsibilities to learn that history and to know that history because it is our collective history. Right. So there's the roles of the white people, the bad acts of so many, and the ignorance and the oppression. Those are all things that happened that involved really the whole community, in parts in different ways, right? So the Black people who were enslaved, who were taken, whose labor was used and abused, that built up the wealth of this country. If people don't know that, they need to know that. So we need, I love it that, I want to shout out to Zawadi Books and all of our we have some great books, independent bookstores in this city. Zawadi Books is wonderful. There's Second Chance Books, Talking Leaves, and of course, Burning Books is a wonderful asset to the community. So many great bookstores, Rust Belt Books. But anyway, what Sharon Holly of Zawadi Books says, buy those books and make sure you're saving them, sharing them, everything else, because people need to know. When other people are trying to erase the history, we need to know the true history and really promote it and delve into it. And we're richer for it. Yeah. We learn more from our mistakes. We can learn more about how to do things differently. So I'd like to see if either of you in the production booth have something you want to share on that piece of it about our responsibility or our ability to help to keep Black history and our shared history alive, of the truth of the matter of history.
Well, one thing that came to my attention, I brought it up on the screen so I get it right, is the removal of the slavery exhibit at the Independence National Historical Park in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Right. It's ridiculous.
Because President Trump doesn't want any, I'm trying to think of the word he used, but he only wants us to celebrate the good things done by the country. It's like, well, geez, man, I got to take the bad with the good. We got to.
The truth.
If you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Right. Exactly.
I have a friend that refers to. I have a lot of nerdy historian friends. He refers to, how you say, people say history repeats itself. He said it doesn't necessarily repeat itself. It actually is an echo. For instance, when we're looking at what we're seeing with the current fascist dynamic of the United States, this has always been a thing for me in my Black body. This is how I have experienced the United States.
Right.
Like I'm tickled to some extent that people are shocked at what's happening, and I'm like, it literally happened right up the street. The murder of people, innocent folks, harmed Black and Indigenous people. So how is this bizarre and weird to you at this moment? What we're actually seeing is an enhancement of what has already been. There is a long history of fascism here in the United States. I lived in Youngstown, Ohio, and in doing my usual being nosy as a historian, I found that there was a party for the KKK, and there was also a Nazi party that was written. This is prior to the rise of Adolf Hitler,
right?
And so the Third Reich and Adolf Hitler and his ilk, they learned here how to be how to bring forth fascism. It was birthed here. It was, if not birthed, it was cultivated here. And they saw, okay, so this is how you do these folks. So, so they did that. They just used the constructs that they had at the time, the horrible concentration camps and labeling people, the yellow star on the sweater, and this kind of foolishness reminds me of the brands on the, with an iron on the back of Black folks. I own this person. Right. It reminds me of that. I think, and there was an erasure of Jewish history as well throughout Germany during that same construct. So we're seeing an echo here. We're not seeing a repeat of history. And when I see folks saying things like, I can't believe this is happening. Well, it may be because you're unstudied, because you're unread, because our education system, or this education system, because if it were ours, we wouldn't be here. This education system is controlled by a very few people. You have a board of people who create the history books that get into and social studies books that get into our children's hands. And it's not the children's people that are helping to contribute to that history book being created in the first place. So history is said to be written from the vantage point of the victor.
Right.
And that's what we have here.
That is what we have. And that is such a huge problem because of truth is, not always simple, but absolutely critical, important. I think of Gandhi and, satyagraha, truth-seeking, that it's just so important, so vital. But I do want to give a shout-out to the comedians because I'm thinking, as you're saying that, when you say, well, like, people are surprised. I don't know how it's people. I remember when, there's Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock were like, they had this thing where white people, there's a group of people all watching the returns come in, the electoral returns. And when they go, the white people are saying, oh, I can't believe it. It's just so unbelievable. I can't, nothing. This is the worst thing this country has ever done.
Yeah.
And then, and then these black guys are standing there like, oh, please, what do you know? Nothing. Are you, have you paid any attention?
And I'm wondering if people are just. I've been trying to theorize if people are just. How you don't want to hear something that's horrible.
Right.
Especially if somehow you were connected to it. It's like sticking your
Right.
like children. They stick
Right.
their fingers in their ears and they go, nah, nah, la, la, I
Right.
can't hear you.
Yeah.
It seems more like that than it is because anything else. Because there's also this thing of who wants to let go of power. Let's be very
Right.
honest.
Right. And privilege.
Euro-American males are who is running the country and have historically been running. It was always run by multinational corporations, and they weren't run by indigenous people. So they don't want to lose some sense of power, which I always found power a problematic word anyway.
Right.
People always trying to pursue it. I'm like, yeah, that's not really going to work. And who in their right mind would let go of having absolute power over military dynamics, over an economic stratum, banks, schools. In Western dynamic, sharing, like we mentioned sharing earlier,
Right.
and you all were
Right.
talking about cooperation.
Absolutely.
That's antithetical to the way Western civilization is constructed. So
You know,
it wouldn't.
I got to say, you're making one of the things I'm also thinking, and I think this is one of the reasons, we have in Buffalo a very strong Black community that has, have two of their own newspapers, weekly newspapers that come out every week, beautifully done. Shout out to the Criterion and the Challenger, Alnisa Banks and her family, and the whole Merriweather family.
Yeah, they're
They have
beautiful
done
newspapers.
wonders. And there's so many ways, so the history of the strength of the Black community, which made it, people went internal and just sort of don't deal with the white people. Because because white people sort of trying to control or interfere, so they've just had their own. And this is how we are one of the most segregated cities, which is one of the reasons that we were such a target, or I'm going to say the Black community here in Buffalo was targeted by this insane, young. I don't know,
You can say
murderer.
psychopath.
Yeah,
You can-
psychopath.
it's okay to say psychopath or
and,
sociopath, Vicky. It's okay.
He's just a very sick, and has had a cult member. The cult member that he was, it's one of the reasons. So I want to say the strength of the Black communities. Look at that beauty, and that also, as you said, that is when the white community had gone after the Black community. The people who got lynched were the people who were more successful. If they were more successful, they were a target for lynching.
It was like that
to take the resources and also to show the other people, don't you think you're going to get away with that? And
it was like that in the South. Both sides of my family are descendant of I'm a descendant of farmers and sharecroppers. The sharecroppers were in Tennessee and Arkansas, and we owned our own farms in the 1800s in Alabama. Right? I can't find the farm records for where I have kind of an approximation because we also established a church there of where that land was. But the thing is, the land is according to what's her name, Leah Pennyman. She wrote a book called Farming While Black, and she said, for us, land is the source of our pain. So us leaving and being chased off of like farmland down in the South was a part of that dynamic of attacking our economic prowess. Right. There were towns. There is a Lake Martin in Alabama, which at one point was a Black-run town that is now buried underwater. It was intentionally flooded. And that's happened several times throughout the United States history. That economic prowess of the Black farmers, since we use more of a cooperative farming construct, which is natural to our cultural ethos, this is like who we are. They were so successful, folks were not only jealous, they just didn't see, it's kind of hard to maintain a, I use a term that Bell Hooks would say, white masculinist imperialism, as opposed to white supremacy. But in order to maintain that construct in your own head, you can't have anyone else succeeding and looking like they could be at least on par with you, if not better in some dynamics.
It's that over competition. I do want to shout out to Leah Penniman. We had her for the annual dinner the Western New York Peace Center annual dinner a couple of years ago. What a wonderful, wonderful woman.
Yes, she is.
So I want to, so I like to shift the conversation a little bit too, and this will help us. I mean, we've been talking about, the wonderful and the terrible are side by side every day and intimately connected. So there's some of the parts we've been talking about that are very sad or bad, negative, and some of the parts that are just so good. But I want to shift the thing to the Tu B'Shvat, the Jewish celebration that is happening today, that is the Festival of Trees, or like the Birthday of Trees, which also shout out to the indigenous community. So when I did the Ganonio, and I didn't mention the trees, most times I do, because I really am a big fan of the trees. But
they're a fan of you also.
Oh,
you know.
thank
They,
you.
they love you a lot.
Well, they give us so
providing all that
much.
oxygen, right?
Oxygen, keeping the land together. Sometimes we really go into it. And I'm going to say that with the Ganonio, they mention the trees, of course, mentioning the trees and all that they give us, from beauty to shade to the wood to holding the ground together, to especially the oxygen, as you said, so critical to life on this earth. Just so many ways of stopping erosion, all kinds of things that the trees give us, so fruits and nuts and just so many things. And but they mention the maple tree as the leader of the trees, because it is the first tree that's giving off the sap. And of course, this is the Haudenosaunee, so their trees are our indigenous trees, right? So they don't have the ceiba tree, which I could talk some about the ceiba tree. But anyway, so I wanted to talk about trees. And so, first of all, their place in our different faith traditions and in our lives, and also the way, just a quick mention of the way they are in community, because the new research has shown, people have seen how trees actually feed each other, share resources together, shore up the weaker tree that's struggling, that through their root systems. They do all of that. Yeah. And we haven't known it. It's just so beautiful and so wonderful to see that trees are in community.
It is actually new to Western culture. It's new to Western culture,
right. But it's not new
African and indigenous people, and indigenous people inside of Europe as well. Understand when I say indigeneity, it's a large construct.
Right.
This is why you don't just randomly cut a tree down.
Right.
Actually, I feel I have a actual reaction in my body when I see a tree being cut.
Right.
He used to call me a flower child, and I'm like, yeah, okay.
Well, we love
I'm not offended by that at any rate.
We love them.
But it's their connection is not too dissimilar from the way humans are supposed to be connected. Mm-hmm. Their very intricate system of root structure where they share resources,
right?
Making sure that all are well, even that larger trees will intentionally, and I said that correctly, intentionally cover the smaller trees for protection. And I just posed, and I can't remember the name of this tree. I just reposted on my Instagram page a video of a tree that actually walks.
Wow!
And it takes a minute.
What's your Instagram handle?
It just get up and just like walk. Dr. Majadi Baruti.
Okay.
Dr. Baruti.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the tree walks, but they recorded it over a long period of time,
and
it was shift because of the necessity to share nutrients and that type of thing. The understanding that all life is precious, and that even planting a tree or cultivating a tree is not just a physical act; it's symbolic of care for future generations.
Right.
As you mentioned earlier, this is across traditions,
right.
Life continuity, the interconnection. Right. And we need to encourage more people to take ethical and spiritual care of trees, bushes, flowers. I've seen this thing where they have people cut the grass, and then they put it in a garbage bag, and then they put it in the garbage can so it could go to a landfill.
Oh my
I'm like,
God.
what what in nine hells are you doing? What are you doing?
Right.
Why are you doing that? It's so bizarre. When you could just, I mean, I'm not really into lawns anyway.
Right.
Like where we live, we plant like huge sunflowers, and people darn near crash their cars trying to see our sunflowers. What they give to us and what we should do in return are not they're not weighed evenly. There's a beautiful song based on a really badly produced documentary called The Secret Life of Plants. I think it was 1972, and my favorite artist, Stevie Wonder, did an album called Journey Through the Secret Life of Plants.
Yes.
So the album didn't sell well, nor did the documentary. It was really cheesy, but
That's okay.
But he has a song in there where it's my favorite song. It's simply called The Secret Life of Plants. And I get a little teary hearing it. And he talks about how the leaves are seen by some as antennas to the universe. And we take from trees our food and our habiliment. We take all this stuff, and then we slash them and we burn them. And I'm like, what are y'all doing?
Right.
What are we doing? It doesn't even make sense. Then we complain that our streets are too hot.
Yeah.
Well, ding-dongs, if you didn't cut the trees down,
Right.
we'd be fine.
Right.
And then we complain about hunger. I have a scientist friend in Birmingham, Alabama, and she did some research on how the trees, the female trees, and let me say it like this. The way that we treat Earth is the same way people treat women.
Right.
It's exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
The language is almost the same.
Thank you for that.
So they took the female trees and they cut them down. Do you know why? Because
Trying to reduce the trees.
Well, no, they didn't want to pick up the fruit.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, that's
Right.
another one.
It sounds
right.
they
Right.
were-
No,
It was just a
heard
lazy
people-
center dynamic. I'm not trying to pick up all
I've
that
heard
damn
people
fruit.
say that
Well,
very thing.
Well, you could actually share the fruit with people who are hungry. You could do that.
There's somebody has one of my favorites. I love so many of the trees. The red bud trees. If you ever seen of course you know a red bud tree.
Yeah.
We have red bud trees around here, and this person has this beautiful red bud tree in their yard, and they didn't like it. When I talked to them, I met them, and I just said, "Oh, what a beautiful tree you have here! I've admired your tree for so long." They're like, "Oh, it makes so much of a mess," and they're pruning this thing down to almost nothing, which I guess is so. Maybe it's going bonsai or something, but it's just painful to me that they don't enjoy the tree. But anyway, I want to go around and give you each, Greg and Brian, any thoughts you want to share on trees.
So actually, I have a tree story.
Oh, good.
I've got a couple, but this is a positive one. So
Good.
this coming April 25th, I think this is the 40th anniversary of something that I was involved in at SUNY Fredonia. We planted a radio tree.
Oh, wow.
So it was in the lawn outside the building where the college radio station was at that time. It's since moved to a different building. But we had this whole ceremony during our show called High Noon Friday, which is still on the air, by the way, 40 years later.
Wow.
And we actually buried a microphone with it. So we hand dug the hole. A local nursery donated the tree or gave it to us at a discount. And as we were filling the hole around the root ball with dirt, we had a microphone in there so you could hear the soil hitting around it live on the air. And
Wow.
then when we were done burying it, we just cut the cable so that microphone is still buried there 40 years later. But yeah, it's going to be coming up on April 25th, 40th anniversary of that.
That's beautiful.
And
Yeah.
I still get down there regularly. In fact, I'm going down tomorrow, and the tree's still healthy and blooming 40 years later.
Well, I hope you're there on April 25th if it works.
Yes, definitely.
If it works for you.
There's big plans for that. So yes, I'm planning
good.
to be there. Yeah.
Oh, good. And Brian?
I think it's cool that we're talking about Black History Month and this Jewish festival of the holiday, because there's kind of a duality happening there where like trees survive because of deep roots and like hidden networks that sustain the growth over time.
Right.
And you look at the beauty of the tree and you think it's kind of always been there, but no, it's actually been nurtured for hundreds of years to get to where it's at, and you need all of that nurturing in order to get the beautiful tree. You can't start hacking away at it, literally.
No.
So I think the metaphor was really interesting, kind of.
We need, it takes the time it takes, right? It takes the time it takes. It takes the support and all the elements that it needs of the sunshine, the water. I want to tell my favorite tree story because I just love this. And it really ties together because of Black History Month and the trees. Did I tell you this? I don't know if I've told this story before about the ceiba tree. So the ceiba tree, C-E-I-B-A, if you look it up and you'll see these trees, they are magnificent, so beautiful. And when I was in Cuba, they said, well, there's two sacred trees in Cuba, the royal palm and the ceiba tree. So the ceiba tree came from Africa. It's often planted in a town square, and a lot of times they would have, at town, if the town had a gathering or they're trying to do some peaceful conflict resolution, it would be under the tree. There are serious talks. Or if two people were fighting, say if we were fighting, they would put they'd put us both on either side of the tree and have our arms, both of us with our arms around the tree. And then after some time of that, the issue would be resolved. Yeah. And so we were getting some talk by somebody in a town square, and I saw the ceiba tree over there, and I thought, well, I wonder what it would be like if I go over and hug that tree. And so I did. And what followed was, for me, if not the peak experience of my life, where as I had my arms around this tree, I felt all the life that had gone on around it for all the 200 years or however long it had been there. I just felt it rushing through me in a way that is just indescribable. And it was so incredibly powerful. So, I mean, I think there's so much, in Christianity, they talk about Jesus Christ, the apple tree. In Hinduism, there's that he who has seen the tree whose roots are up, that they're going to realize, go, into really nirvana or samadhi. So in all of our faith traditions, in Islam, there's all kinds of mentions of trees.
Right.
So Majadi.
I think every time I have conversations with the plants as well. Mm-hmm. And I remember being in Birmingham, Alabama, and there was a park, Avondale Park. Mm-hmm. And it is, right now it's lush, and, they cultivated it, they carved it out of where a creek had been. Mm-hmm. And they blocked off the creek because they didn't want the creek going into the street. The problem is when it rained, the entire park would still get flooded because water finds its source.
Right.
Right. And I walked through the trees, and I had conversation. Mm-hmm. Not this open mouth kind of like where you're looking at the tree and you're talking to the tree, but communicating with them. And that had been a spot for lynching.
Really?
Now, here's the thing. Mm-hmm. You have to really think out a lynching. People think of lynching as some dynamic way. They're pissed and people just ran and grabbed somebody and just started. No. You have to think this out. For instance, you have to know how much rope you need. Mm-hmm. You have to know how tall the person is, their weight, or have some understanding of that. And you have to find the right tree. Mm-hmm. All trees aren't shaped to be hung from.
Right.
So this is the trees taught me this. Mm-hmm. And I went into I was in a state of horror.
Right.
I said, so it's when we play the damage to people's bodies and people's spirits and people's culture, we kind of make it like it's like an all of a sudden thing. Like somebody just rushed. No. This is a well thought out process to harm others.
Right.
The current presidency moving to harm people. People think, oh, he's crazy. I'm like, I think you're kind of oversimplifying that. Mm-hmm. This is well thought out to harm other people. Mm-hmm. But there is so much that we could do in the reverse.
Right.
whereas they're bringing the hate dynamic, we can expand the idea and the understanding of what love is. And I've started to really, my own personal ministry, Wuja Temple, has been deeply rooted in the divine feminine.
What is the word you're saying?
Wuja.
Wuja.
UDJA.
UDJA.
Yeah.
Wuja. Wuja or Uja?
Wuja.
Wuja.
It means wise woman. It has some other names like Amin, like prosperity. And I started in 2008, 2009. And in my ministry, I'm always centering an earth spirituality, the protection of BIPOC women and children. Love is the highest construct. So I'm pushing love on a higher level.
Absolutely.
And in doing so, it means that I have to work in a way as an earth chaplain to connect people to the planet.
Right.
To reacclimate ourselves to being one and understanding that, that as the indigenous have always grasped,
right,
that the animals, the spiders, the ants, the
right,
aardvarks,
right,
the birds, the water, they are all life and living,
right,
and they are sibling as
right,
well. And until we get back to that kind of space, things like lynchings and that type of thing will continue. We have to really, we don't want to battle hate with more of it.
No.
We want to do the opposite, do the thing. And then, you know, fascism doesn't do well in a construct of love.
Right.
It doesn't move love in any shape, form, or fashion because there's no energy of love inside of fascism.
Right.
So we can't do what they do to fight them.
No. So
we have
hate,
to do what we do best.
Well, this is
love.
Yeah, this is Dr. King. This is what we know. This is what we know. You know, hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. That love, truth and love. You know, one of my favorite that Dr. King said, unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. And these are all pieces of that, you know, in so many ways. There's just, you know, that caring, that being in beloved community. And that is what has enabled people who've been oppressed to continue to help each other, to care for each other. You are making me think of one of our chants that we use a lot, you know, that goes, Jim Anderson and I developed this over time, that it was 1, we are the people. 2, we love each other. 3, we will not let them wreck our planet. And, you know, we've said it in other times when it's not really an environmental protest, you know, but because all of our issues are connected. So one of the things...
We're all on the planet
so we're all on
issues.
The planet with these... Yes, so, exactly.
Yeah, the planet
the warring,
is the thing.
Right. You know, the military being the biggest polluter in the creation, the way, you know, climate catastrophe going on, you know, all kinds of things that make it so, you know, clear that, you know, what we need to do is just... unarmed truth and unconditional love. Or I love, there's so many different ways of putting it, of, you know, communication and cooperation, right?
Yeah.
If we're really doing that. Or Cornel West said, you know, moral integrity and universal solidarity. So there's different ways of putting it that can be more abstract or more prescriptive. But what we know is, you know, working for something positive, and we just need a balance. And it doesn't mean never talking about the negative or something, because we have to call that out too. That's part of the truth. Right. But it's not done in hate. It's done in love, you know. And actually, because this is why I reclaimed my teenage nickname of Victory, to give me an excuse to bring up the real victory. Everybody wins, because those people who think they're winning now, including he who shall not be named, they are not winning. They're damning their eternal souls. Their karma is going off the charts, that they're going to pay, like, sooner or later in whatever way, and plus their children who will also pay. So it just, you know, because all of our children will pay for all the bad deeds or the things that aren't getting done that need to get done, or the things that are getting done that really shouldn't be done. Yeah. So we're coming around to the almost over. The show is almost over. Yeah. So I'd just like to give each of you, Greg and Brian, if you just want any, any quick reaction that you want to share, and then of course you, Majadi, and then we're going to be signing out. So
I guess I could throw another tree thing out there for you. We're blessed in our house to have this beautiful king maple, is what my wife calls it. It's a red maple.
Beautiful.
The people before us planted it, and the kids used to be able to put their arms around it, and as they grew, they could still kind of get around. But now it's a good sized tree, and right now all you can see in it really are the squirrel nests, which is fine. But boy,
We
when
love our squirrels too.
when that thing fills up with leaves, it's just great to sit in the house and just look out and see the birds flitting around and the squirrels and
Yeah, it's breathtaking. I'm looking at an image of it now.
yeah, it's a great tree.
Oh, we love that they're so beautiful, and the leaders of the trees, per the Haudenosaunee, at least in this region. Brian.
Yeah, what a great conversation all around. I think it's always important to try and remember how invisible a lot of the forces that we're talking about are. And I think the masses of people would be much more willing to combat them if they were even aware of them. But we talked about what happened in Germany in the 40s, and we talked about your town in Alabama, but we don't need to go that far. Back in Buffalo,
Right.
there was the Home Loan Corporation, the HOLC, and they did targeted advertisements for homeowners in the suburbs that were white and for low interest rates in order to get white people to move out so they could sell those same homes to black people who were just recently allowed to own homes for exorbitantly more interest rates. And they used racist sentiment in the community in order to forward that very thing. And that is a very concrete reason why Buffalo is such a segregated city. It was a direct and conscious effort, not on behalf of the community that didn't like each other, but on people trying to sell houses.
Right.
Just to make a buck. So, you know, I do think that's an important thing to remember. Like, you know, we're not, our fellow Americans, our fellow people, our fellow community members aren't all hateful. There is billions and billions and billions of dollars invested in propagandizing and separating us. And it's important to remember that you know, just because they might be on the other side of you at a protest and your enemy, then it's not really what they would do if they knew what was going on.
Right. Thanks, Brian. And Majadi.
So I'll end here, and I know this is a college station.
Yes.
So I'm an author as well. I've written 2 books of poetry. One is called A Blues Man's Blues, Poems on Love, Sex, and Revolution. You can find that on lulu.com. You can find it on Amazon. But the one I really want to push forward right now is called Yellow, Poetry for an Abundant Earth. The idea behind this work is to write poetry that speaks to the salvation, the preservation of life on the planet. It's a high love vibration, and that is something you can actually find that in the public library. If they don't have it, you can ask them to make sure they get it in the public library. But Yellow Poetry for an Abundant Earth is written to uplift and to provide energy for solutions to the climate collapse that we're in right now.
Wonderful. Well, that I have to get a copy of that. So I want to say I am so grateful to you, Majadi, Reverend Dr. Majadi Baruti, our Earth chaplain and just poet and wonderful brother and friend.
Thank you.
We're so grateful. So grateful to you,
Thank
Greg,
you guys. Thank you guys.
to Brian, both of you so much. To you out there listening, there's all kinds of things going on and also not going on. We had a protest about Palestine that was rescheduled from this coming Saturday, the 7th, to probably the 21st. Hopefully it'll be warmer. But we want to be quick to get off the air. But I have to say, so grateful to be here with you all. This is Talking Peace, and together we've been talking peace in truth and love.